This video was made for educational purposes only. Music. Just like other art forms, or maybe even more than other art forms depending on the person, it is a way of expression that usually makes us feel some sort of emotion when we listen to it. From happiness to sadness, from relaxation to excitement, and on some rare occasions it can even cause physical reactions, with one of these physical reactions being chills. These can be caused by a number of factors, but in my case, it's usually associated with great emotional peaks within a song, instrumental or otherwise. There are only a few artists that I can say that give me the chills when I listen to them. Heck, there are only a few songs that supply me with this feeling. From the powerful burst of a dying Freddie Mercury on his last song Mother Love, to the final guitar solo present in Pink Floyd's Comfortably Numb, there is a select group of songs that simply give us the chills in a way that very few art forms can. If it's rare to find a single song that makes you feel this way, then a whole album full of these types of songs is even rarer. Only a handful of albums have made me feel this way, and I imagine that will be the case for a lot of people. And today I'm here to talk about one of them, Pink Moon by Nick Drake. But first, in order to fully comprehend what Pink Moon represents, we have to talk about its creator, his career up to that point, and his mental state when recording this record. Nicholas Rodney Drake was born on June 19, 1948. Both of his parents were incredibly influential in his musical insight, with both of them writing music. His mother Molly's songs are even noted to have had some similarities to his musical style. Nick played the piano for the school orchestra, and learned clarinet and saxophone as well. He even formed a short-lived band called the Perfume Gardeners with 4 schoolmates in either 1964 or 1965. In the latter year, Nick paid the equivalent of £268 for his first acoustic guitar, experimenting with open tuning and figure-picking techniques soon after. His near obsession with the guitar made him evolve as a guitarist rather quickly, and by 1967, as he enrolled in the University of Cambridge to study English literature, he was already performing for local bands on live settings. In 1968, he was introduced to American producer Joe Boyd. They formed an immediate bond, and Boyd offered Nick a management, publishing, and production contract, and signed him to what would turn out later to be Island Records for a 3-album deal. His first album, 5 Weeks Left, was released in 1969. Its performances mostly consisted of Nick Drake playing his acoustic guitar and singing whilst accompanied by string arrangements. The same can't be said of his sophomore album, Brighter Later. This album would possess a whole backing band on all of its tracks to try and give it a more upbeat sound. These 2 albums are amazing and absolutely beautiful. Nick Drake had shown his versatility, with both albums being hauled now as some of the greatest albums of all time, in spite of their differences. So that was that, right? Nick Drake had written 2 of the greatest albums of all time, and was now insanely famous, with thousands or even millions of people hanging on his every word, right? Well, sadly that wasn't really the case. At the time of their release, 5 Weeks Left and Brighter Later were both commercial failures, and received very limited radio play. It also didn't help that Nick had retreated for live performances due to past instances where they went terribly wrong, due to a mixture of the audience not understanding Nick's music, and Nick himself performing brief sets in awkward fashion, where he'd spent most of his time tuning between songs, due to the various tunings in which he played in. To make matters worse, after the release of Brighter Later, Joe Boyd moved back into Los Angeles to develop film soundtracks. All these events made Nick sink into severe depression, with him being prescribed antidepressants by a psychiatrist in 1971. He also started to increase the quantity of marijuana that he smoked to absurd volumes. The failure of his previous efforts made him withdraw even more from his family and friends. All of this self-loathing would culminate in his third, last, and most haunting album, Pink Moon. Before I start with the lyrical analysis of this record, I would like to reinstate that music is subjective, and my interpretations may be very different from your interpretation. And that's fine. It's a subjective medium. That's part of what makes it great. I just wanted to reinforce that. With that being said, let's begin the analysis. Now that we've discussed Nick Drake's mental state and what happened before the conception of this album, it's no wonder that this album is as weak as it is. He had foregone all other instruments apart from his acoustic guitar and a small piano overdub on the title track. This makes it for a very intimate experience, which is a characteristic that is enhanced by the lyrics of the album, which seem a lot more personal than on other previous efforts. The name of the album itself, Pink Moon, is in Catholicism associated with the apocalypse. This is also a prevalent theme in the title track, the first song on the record, which basically describes an apocalypse caused by the coming of the pink moon. Ironically, the song is actually very serene, especially when the previously mentioned piano overdub kicks in. After a short 2 minutes, Pink Moon gives way to Place to Be. This song changes the tone of the lyrics quite a bit, hinting more at the longing or nostalgia that the narrator has for days where he was more confident, stronger, and generally happier, which is how Nick would probably have felt reminiscing about how he was prior to his musical career, and how much he would like to go back to how he perceived himself before. There is also this very beautiful and seamless bridge section between the second and third stanzas that provides more flavor to the song, making it a very enjoyable yet gloomy experience. The third track on this record is Road, one of the songs that I find most interesting on the first side of Pink Moon. The track's name and its lyrics possess a very straightforward meaning, choosing your own path. Yet this path is not what the narrator dreams of, since he prefers the road that sees him through, instead of the road that takes him to the stars, saying that other people can try it, but that he's given up on this road, basically stating that he's given up on his dreams. Musically, this song has a faster tempo than the ones previously mentioned, being also filled with some of the most intricate guitar riffs on the whole album. Definitely one of those songs where the listener mainly becomes infatuated with the guitar playing. The bumpy road is followed by the calm and sad Which Will. I initially found this song to be about being romantically interested in a woman, a theme not uncommon in some of Nick Drake's previous work. But to be honest, the more I look at it, the more I feel the meaning is a bit different, and more related to the separate paths that exist in a person's life, and how you choose them in a way where you find answers to the meaning of your own life. Which is a bit of a stretch, and the result of a lot of overthinking, but it is how I see this song now. Next we have the only instrumental track in this whole album, Horn. It is a very minimalist and peaceful interlude that serves as a great segue into the next song, which is one of my favorite songs of all time, and the first song I heard from this album, Things Behind the Sun. The guitar melodies and the vocal melodies complement each other better than any other song on this album, and the chord progression is just too good to put into words. Lyrically, the song can have multiple interpretations, but at its core, I believe it is a song about sticking true to oneself in the face of adversity, no matter the judgments that two-faced people make of you, if you're not careful about them. It's a good message to pass, but by no means is it a happy song. And by the end of it, the narrator seems to isolate himself from everyone around him, due to this thought process. Its message is very nuanced, yet undeniable, which conveys one of the most amazing moments on the record, and one of the biggest highlights in the folk genre, right at the end of Pink Moon's first side. To start things off on the second side, we've got No, a song that looks like a representation of the relationship between two individuals. The first person in verses 1 and 3 thinks that they are in love with the other one and sees them for who they really are, whereas the other individual in verses 2 and 4 doesn't really care and knows that the other person doesn't actually know the real him or her. Melody-wise, it is a very simple and kinda weird song, consisting of a single hammer-on riff played over and over again, while Nick Drake spends the majority of the time humming instead of singing, which provides the listener with a sort of uneasy vibe before what is probably the darkest song in the whole album. Parasite is Pink Moon's 8th track, and its lyrical content is filled to the brim with heart-wrench, self-loathing, and loneliness. In this song, the narrator describes himself as a parasite, roaming through a very cold society, bringing down everyone that comes near him. Sort of a reflection of Nick Drake's own depressive state. A detail that I just wanted to talk about that makes this song seem even more real is when he says the line "watching the shine of the shoes," which is such a potent indicator of low self-esteem, because it indicates that the narrator is constantly looking down. Another interesting detail is the appearance of the clown, usually a character associated with joyous moments, feeling down, in a sense a metaphor to represent how even the happiest of people are brought down by the narrator's presence. The following track on the record is Free Ride, a song for which I think I need to provide some further context. It was normal for Nick to go on all-night drives at this point of his life, where he would just drive around aimlessly until he got out of gas and had to call someone, normally his parents, so they could give him a ride back home. There were also some people claiming that the song could be about Nick Drake's close friend and main love interest, Sophia Ride, due to the similarities in the song name and in the person's name, and how the aimlessness of his drives correlated to the aimlessness of his relationships, since, according to people who knew him at this time, he was too shy or socially anxious to form them properly. This song also has an incredibly catchy lick within the chorus, which makes the experience of listening to it all the more enjoyable, before we sink back again into depression as we touch upon the second to last song on the record, Harvest Breed. A very brief and dark song which touches on the lack of someone that you could call a friend. This loneliness in the lyrics results in the narrator wanting to end it all. In that sense, this song can be considered darker than Parasite. So the narrator kisses the flowers that bend before getting ready to die, which is represented by the harvest breed itself, since the harvest breed are the crops that get selected to die. So, after the suicidal mood present in Harvest Breed, we arrive at the last song on the record, From the Morning. I think it's great that after a whole album filled with heartbreak, failing at your own path, and self-esteem issues, we ended off on a positive note. From the Morning represents the hope that lingers within the narrator, that one day things could get better. Every lyric in this song, at least in my interpretation, is positive. From the air of the night, to the colors, to the sights, making you feel good by the end of the record. This was also Nick Drake's parents' favorite song of his old discography, which goes to show just how beautiful it is. This is far from a perfect depiction, by the way. I'm sure you'll find your own reasoning for enjoying this record, and it may be even a lot different from mine. Heck, in a few years, my own reasoning may be very different from the one that I have right now. But anyway, let's talk about the aftermath of this album's release. So, what happened after this album was released? Was this record the big breakthrough that finally gave Nick Drake the critical and commercial acclaim that he deserved? Well, no. Like the previous two records, Pink Moon was a commercial letdown, and an afterthought in the music press. Nick Drake's depression only got worse, and he ended up moving back with his parents, tragically dying 2 years later in 1974 of an overdose of antidepressants at the tender age of 26, never to see or know the fame that he would achieve decades after. Starting in the 1980s, musicians like The Cure would start citing him as a major influence, and in the 1990s, and ever since then, his popularity would only increase. On one hand, it is great that he eventually got the recognition that he deserved, but on the other, it is a tragedy nonetheless. A tale of a great talent that got virtually ignored by everyone for decades straight. One can only wonder how many musicians were in this situation and were never really uncovered. At the end of the day, we cannot change the past, but we can always appreciate what it has to offer. And hopefully, after watching this video, you'll go listen to Pink Moon and Nick Drake's other records as well, since they are great as well. And who knows, hopefully it'll mean as much to you as it does to me. This is Joe Fiki Fiki, and I'll see you next time with another video. Bye bye.